when it comes to building in the approach. You have to be taking the approach as utilizing the fundamental principles that we see in Bitcoin itself. So having a standard rule set that you apply to yourself every day with discipline, and developing standard operating procedures that force us to hold ourselves accountable to higher standards. It's a daily grind. Like, you have to be always doing preventative maintenance, inspections, and things like that, so that you can kind of foresee issues before they happen and keep this infrastructure going, because it's not just for self. This is bigger than us, and it requires a great sacrifice sometimes to achieve greatness.
Welcome back to Bitcoin Audible. I'm Guy Swan, the guy who has read more about Bitcoin than anybody else you know. We have got another chat from Plan B El Salvador today. This one is with Bitcoin Mechanic and HODLTarantula. HODLTarantula is a solo out in the boonies, boots on the ground miner, and everybody knows Bitcoin Mechanic and what he's done and what he's contributed with Ocean and actually allowing hashers to become miners and build their own block templates, and how important I think that project is, how much I really wish the core developers and the rest of the mining ecosystem actually seem to care about that issue. It feels like we mostly have just gotten complacent about it and been like, oh, it's not that big a deal. Miners can switch pools. And that's not really a solution. It's like saying that, like, okay, we can react to something bad as opposed to prevent something bad from happening. And so we kind of last minute did Bitcoin Mechanic, and then I was chatting with HODLTarantula's crazy guy, and I always love conversations with him. And we were talking late at night, the night before we did this, and I was like, dude, why don't you just come on? Why don't we just do the panel? I'll force him to put another chair up on the stage and we'll get it sorted. And he was like, all right, let's do it. So this one was really fun. We got into a bunch of fun stuff about mining and the state of it and the concerns and some of the things. I think we got into a little bit about Bit 110 or the fork wars. So I think you guys are really going to like this one. With that, shout out real quick to the HRF and their amazing work, as well as their Financial Freedom Report newsletter and the Oslo Freedom Forum. That is June 1st to 3rd this year. If you have a conference that you want to go to be inspired and hear stories from people who literally have skin in the game, there is no better place. And you can get tickets right down in the show notes. And it's a great way to help out the show. So with that, let's get into this episode of Bitcoin Audible. This is chat, who knows what, with Bitcoin Mechanic and HODLTarantula. This is mining in real life.
Manifested that one.
Yeah. I think we have to make this a little bit quicker. Guys, so this is, for anybody who doesn't know, this is Bitcoin Mechanic and HODLTarantula. Two awesome, we sort of ended up making a mining panel here. And also two very good friends of mine. I love you guys. And I wanted to dig into, we got like I said, short amount of time, but I actually thought this would be great because you are with Ocean, which is basically, in my opinion, the most sovereign mining pool. And HODLTarantula, you are probably the most sovereign actual on-the-ground miner that I know of. So I kind of wanted to dig into that. Mechanic, maybe kick it off, introduce yourself for anybody who doesn't know. Everybody knows you, but just in case.
Yeah, I work for Ocean, all around. Sorry, I look hungover. I'm not. I'm fine. I'm just tired. I work for Ocean. I'm not great at self-introductions and stuff like that. I'm an old hodler, and I do lots of things to try and make sure Bitcoin remains the best. And it needs maintenance, it needs work, people need education, and there's a lot of space in this space for people that want to help onboard people and help them not fall back into these fiat habits that they often enter Bitcoin with. So that's been my self-appointed role for a while, and I do it professionally at Ocean. and yeah, come get involved.
Hodl.
Hi, my name is HT, or you may know me as HODLTarantula. I've been building off-grid Bitcoin mining operations utilizing alternative sources of energy since 2017. Prior to that, I did automation, robotics, and logistics. And well, now the goal is to take and provide to the rest of the world some of the most sovereign ways possible to maintain this infrastructure so that we can truly continue to say that we cannot and will not be stopped.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. So one of the things that interests me, and I think there's maybe like a loss of focus or a failure to remember how many different pieces of Bitcoin there are, that Bitcoin isn't just software. And kind of what interests me about like what both of y'all do in your projects is that there's a lot more wrenches. There's a lot more like on the ground, like doing things and plugging things in than I think people realize. Like there's real infrastructure. It's not just a piece of software that you run on your machine. And I'm curious how you think about that and how, because I mean, Bitcoin mechanic, like that's where it kind of came from, is like, okay, how do you, let's focus on how to plug stuff in. Like how do y'all think about that in kind of the loss of culture and like keeping that perspective alive and addressing that problem of making sure that we don't forget the last mile or maybe the first mile of making that robust?
So for myself personally, when it comes to building and the approach, you have to be taking the approach as utilizing the fundamental principles that we see in Bitcoin itself. So having a standard rule set that you apply to yourself every day with discipline and developing standard operating procedures that force us to hold ourselves accountable to higher standards, and then approaching any task with this mindset up front and going to give us the ability to produce the best possible outcomes that we can. And then when it comes to the physical infrastructure, the boots on the ground, it's a daily grind. Like you have to be always doing preventative maintenance, inspections, and things like that, so that you can kind of foresee issues before they happen and keep this infrastructure going, because it's not just for self. This is bigger than us, and it requires a great sacrifice sometimes to achieve greatness. And so
yeah, your own resilience is the resilience of Bitcoin.
Correct.
You know, like if we set ourselves up to be unstoppable or to be sovereign, we're a tiny piece of making sure that extends upward to the entire ecosystem.
Correct.
I didn't understand the question.
So how do you think
Only
about
the backsplash of you? There's nothing of you in these front monitors here.
we need like a video?
Yeah. Can I get some of him in the wedge?
We get an AI that can just summarize. It can just like put in normal words what I say. But the question was really like, how do you think about less about like what do we need in Bitcoin development, but more like what do we need with Bitcoin implementation? Like what machines do we need running? What pools do we need? Like how do you think about the perspective that in my opinion, and maybe I'm even wrong, but the people are so focused on the software and they forget that there's real cords and machines and things plugged in that actually keep all of this running. You know, you have to have a node. You have to have and
hardware.
That's a huge problem. And how do you make sure that those things are sovereign? And like, what do you do in that context?
The whole ocean goal was make miners Bitcoin again, or make hashers miners again. And it was basically just that miners haven't run nodes in like 15 years, and they had no reason to, because they couldn't mine. If they wanted to split rewards with other miners, then they just had to trust a pool to construct blocks and broadcast them to the network and do all the things that nodes do. Like literally, since Satoshi was around, the minute he quit, mining inside Bitcoin nodes stopped being a thing, and you had to run tertiary software to be able to make work for miners. And that became the norm, which was crazy because someone with, I like to point out, someone with $100 million worth of mining equipment, if you give them a Bitcoin node and they're like, I don't know what to do with this, that's kind of an absurd situation, and it was the norm. And so Ocean came along and made a protocol that allows you to actually mine the way miners want to mine, i.e. not wait around for blocks, but split rewards with other miners, but still actually able to broadcast their blocks directly to the network without having a pool have the ability to trash it. And further to that, actually design their own blocks, and that comes with other benefits too, because they can put their own transactions in things, but not have to lotto mine, which means waiting around for blocks. So this was kind of the missing piece of the puzzle for mining to become decentralized and look like it did back when Satoshi was around, but integrate the reality, which is miners use pools. They have to pool rewards with other miners, otherwise they go out of business waiting for blocks. They have to deal with too much variance from the network. So that was basically the pragmatic thing that had to be dealt with. And it took a long time for someone to actually write a protocol that did it, and it was us. So that was the mission. Once upon a time, it was like, we're going to do this, and then we actually did it at the end of 2024. The Datum protocol came out, so that's how anyone should mine. And it makes you more money than the middleman model of mining, which is what most miners still use. Most miners still just get a pool to do everything for them, smooth out variance to 100%, and then pay a massive commission in that capacity, because the bigger the middleman, the more of a cut they're going to take. So Ocean was designed to strip out the middleman to most degree and just leave it with the miner communicating directly with Bitcoin, splitting rewards using a dumb, transparent coordination layer, and that's what Ocean wants to be. It wants to be as simple and transparent as possible.
And you guys pay better.
We pay way better. We pay, year on year, we're about 5% up above the best FPPS pool. So it's pretty much a no-brainer at this point, unless you need like payouts every hour and you need them to be identical, and we can't match that. But I think it's not worth 5% if you do need it. Adjust your business model so that you don't go out of business in 1 hour.
I think my favorite thing when I changed my miner is at home right now heating my house, heating my basement, and one of my favorite things about actually setting up with Ocean was that I just punched in. I was like, oh, there's a URL, and I pasted that, and then I just punched in an address, and like that was it. I was like, okay, so I don't have to do anything else, and then sure enough, a few days later or whatever, we got like our first payout, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, then we started giving you money, and you couldn't stop us.
Yeah, it was really dope. And one of the things that gets me and why I've been interested in Ocean for a while is just that, if you have 50,000 or 100,000 nodes on the network, but only 7 of them are being used to produce 90% of the blocks on the network, you're defeating the purpose of having 100,000 nodes.
Correct.
And that how few people know or realize that miners are not miners. They are not Bitcoin miners. They are hashers that sell their hash to an actual miner. And then in addition, that to dismiss how big of a problem that actually is, and we have seen it with like ghash.io and like things in history, is that like if a pool begins to misbehave or something, then yes, there are incentives. People will log out. Miners will be like, no, I care about Bitcoin. You care about the investment. The incentives are generally aligned. It's not so terrible of a principal agent problem.
We've seen that happen actually in the past, where a pool reached almost to 51% of network hash rate.
Exactly.
And then the actual miners themselves
Everybody
made
freaked out.
a mass exodus.
Exactly. So it's not that incentives aren't. I still think incentives are kind of aligned, right? But there's still such a huge risk there, because like the mining pool doesn't even have to be malicious. They could just be hacked. Like they're also just a central point of failure. And the idea that, miners will react when we're being attacked with mining pools.
This is why I build off grid.
That's exactly right. That miners that will just react, and that will make everything right. Feels a little bit like, to me, rather than using something like Ocean and Datum or Stratum V2 and like actually building your own blocks, is like saying that, like, okay, sure, we might get cancer, but it's okay, we can cut it out really, really quick, as opposed to like, let's stop doing the thing that gives us cancer so we can never have cancer. And it's like, obviously you want to do the latter, and we should not dismiss that there's a significant consequence if we're stuck in the former.
Also, it's not really a thing anymore. When the miners exodused from ghash.io for getting too big, all the pools were basically the same. Back then, it was just a different URL to put in your miner. Now there's
proxy.
like thousands of hours of compliance and paperwork and all this crap that miners have to do to be with a big FPPS pool. The two biggest FPPS pool are complete lock-in. They're full KYC, all that stuff. If Antpool got too big, it's the idea that its miners can just go, okay, I'll just leave and go somewhere else. That's not how miners work today. It was in 2015. They could just go to another pool. But now, if you're locked into Foundry and you're like, and you're Clean Spark or you're Riot or some giant miner like that, and you want to leave, your compliance department's going to be like, yeah, we need 9 months to do all the necessary paperwork. And it doesn't matter. Your investors barely even know what Bitcoin is. They're hardly going to be like, but what about the 51% attack? Like, they've probably never even heard of it.
It's all antithetical to the ethos in general when it comes to why we're doing what we're doing. And that's why I feel like one of the most important aspects of what we're doing is building out in ways that, like Bob Burnett says, that you got, you know, your big elephants, your little rabbits, home miners, and then you got the wild horses like myself, gentlemen going out there and wildcatting and finding ways to produce these operations that are literally impossible to stop unless you quite literally come out there and put a bullet in my brain.
Yeah, the wild horse thing Bob talks about is a nice thing. He says elephant miners are a danger to the network because elephants are too big and they can be captured, but wild horses are not. They can do whatever.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, well, there are all these off-grid miners, right? So Bob himself, when we launched Ocean, we did it at his South Carolina hydro facility. He has 1 megawatt, but that's offline, right? That's not on the grid. No one really can do anything and knock him offline. He's got satellite dish, getting internet, like, you know.
A strong position to be in.
Yeah.
HODL, I'm curious, how do you think about, so you produce your own energy. I mean, like where you're mining, you're out in the middle of nowhere. How do you think about like sourcing energy? Because I really think that's in the context of Bob's like excellent analogy of like the wild horse, it's actually Bitcoin mining, the key to like good Bitcoin mining is to either heat reuse, like have a dual purpose, like mine, because I don't really care what my profitability is. It's not profitable. It heats my house, and then I get paid Bitcoin.
Right.
But then in the other context is that like I've always felt the only real way to be a miner, your focus is energy.
Correct. So there is a point of contention that every miner reaches where they have to fine-tune their operation and maintain certain controls in order to stay viable on the network over the long term. And the most profound way to do this is from behind the meter. If you start there at the point of like 0 to 1 where the energy originates from, so now you basically are mining 4D chess because the variables that would knock most people offline, you're now in control of. And so it's basically like wielding a shield, having the ability to identify underutilized resources or wasted resources and bring the market to the molecule instead of trying to force that the other way. And so this puts Bitcoin miners in the position to be the buyers of energy of last resort in all cases, balancing loads and just, stress testing the systems and making them better.
What specific energy source, like when you're setting up a container or a setup, What energy source are you going, that's the one I want?
So this is going to be based on the geography, right? So, and
It's the one that makes you happiest to find out that it's available.
Say again?
What's the one that makes you most excited? Like, oh, there's natural gas here that's untapped.
So
Oh,
when
there's a
it's,
dam that's
when
not.
it's abundant and obvious, so like water and hydro, or natural gas, where it's a abandoned well or flare, these resources would never make it to the market otherwise. And so what we see here is an opportunity where we get to hold the cards. So they're trying to sell you something, right? But they already couldn't sell it before. And now you come in and like you're
willing to buy something that you're the only bidder.
Exactly. So now it kind of, the tables have turned. I kind of get to call the shots now and dictate the terms and everything because my systems make all this work. Otherwise, you would still be sitting at zero.
Do you mine on ocean?
Affirmative.
Dude, what's coming with oh wait, no, actually, there's another thing. I've been meaning to bring this up on the round table. What you had a statistic that you shared with me once, and it was about how many addresses there are paid out on like in block headers for mining across the network, and then how that statistic changed when Ocean got on. Do you have updated stats on that? Because I thought that was fascinating.
I remember the ballpark. So when Ocean right when Ocean launched, because this is the thing, when a typical, I guess I'll call them legacy pools as a flex, when legacy pools pay out their miners, they do it separately in a bunch of standard Bitcoin transactions. In the blocks the pools actually find, they only pay themselves in their own Bitcoin address. Now those are virgin Bitcoins, right? They have no input. They're kind of sought after. And when Ocean launched, I don't know how long it had been, over some time frame, like the last few years, I don't remember exactly what it was, something like an absolute total of 70 Bitcoin addresses had been the recipient of brand new Bitcoins. You know, out of millions.
144 blocks in a day, and over multiple years, there were only 70 addresses.
Yeah, that's all of the fresh Bitcoins going to the same 70 addresses, but it was much worse than that because we found out the top 10 pools were all using this Kobo custodian, which is a thing run by F2Pool, and it turned out that like 9 out of the top 10 pools were all paying the same entity.
Right.
And there was even some bleed across because a lot of people at this point realize Bitmain run Antpool, right? And they sell like the hardware that 90% of miners run, but they also run 10 of the smaller pools. But F2Pool at least seemed to be a separate pool, but then we found out all of them were using the same 2 pairs of hands to store all the coins. So it really was just like the entire mining industry is run by Foundry, Bitmain, and maybe via BTC. Looked a bit separate, but again, they were partners with Bitmain back in the day as well. So it was all just one giant company. So anyway, when Ocean came along, after a couple of months, we'd paid out 80 fresh Bitcoin addresses. So we'd more than doubled the amount of Bitcoin addresses getting fresh Bitcoins out of the chain. So yeah, thanks. And there were other elements to it too as well, right? So there were just more unique blocks being made by unique nodes that did weird things. And people started paying attention. They were like, what? Why doesn't every block just contain the same thing? Aren't all nodes identical? And it turns out they're not. And they actually can't be. And if they are, and you have expectations around them being the same, you don't really understand what Bitcoin is, which is crazy because actually most of the high-up developers in the space seem to not understand that at all. And that's the nature of the spam war that we're going through at the moment.
It's hard to be objective sometimes, sir.
I keep waiting for my block template to be the one that goes in and says, I wanted to say Guy Swan was here in my block.
Do it. What does your Coinbase text say? Does it Guy Swan was here?
It doesn't say anything yet, but it's going to say that.
It's going to say Bitcoin
that.
Audible.
Is
that 15 characters?
It's good branding, right?
Mine says,
it's marketing.
Get your Bitcoin off the exchange.
All right, guys. Well, we'll wrap it up. Seriously, thank you guys to the Sovereign Bitcoin Pool and the Sovereign Bitcoin Miner. I appreciate it. And
Gracias.
thank you guys for listening to our tiny episode of Bitcoin Audible.
It went from cold to hot out here really, really fast. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. I always love hanging out with those two guys. Don't forget to check them out. I'll have socials and all that good stuff in the show notes. One last thought. I want you to ask yourself this question: is if someone is producing hashes, but they are not actually making their own blocks, are they really a miner? Are they? I'm not sure they are. Just something to think about. With that, I'm here. I'm going to grab some more tools, and I'll catch you on the next one. Until then, I am Guy Swan. This is Bitcoin Audible, and that is our 2 cents.